Hey, this is Zach from We're Not Marketers, and today's episode is brought to you by Product Marketing Alliance, your go-to community for leveling up your product marketing career. PMA's Product Marketing Summits offer an incredible chance to connect with fellow PMMs, hear from industry leaders at companies like Google, Uber, and TikTok, and take your career to the next level. Want to see when a summit is coming to a city near you? Head on over to world.productmarketingalliance.com and don't forget to use the code NOTMARKETERS15. I repeat, NOTMARKETERS15 for 15% off your next ticket. Follow them on LinkedIn at Product Marketing Alliance.
We are a podcast for product marketers in B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do and
basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of We're Not Marketers here at Season 3 with another special guest. But as always, before we jump into that, we'll give a few intros. So I'm Eric Holland. I've been promoted this season to Franken Manager. I'll slide it down my screen to Gab for an intro.
Gab Bugeaud, Sales Deck Associate. So I have a salary now, which is great. I'll introduce my other co-host, Zach.
Zach Roberts, the sales water boy without promotion, but we're going to roll out the red carpet for our boy over here. But before we do that, Eric, you got to give out the intro.
Yeah. I've actually had a personal interaction with Jeff. We'll get into a little bit more later, but we've got Jeff Chase here. If you're not familiar, a rare breed in product marketing, because not only does he own the whole product marketing function, but he also gets to own brand. So it's one of our first times getting that conversation. And really, I think if you don't know Jeff, a couple other notes. He's just a veteran PMM, has spent some time in a brand design team, been at Furcata, and also early days back at Amazon. So all in all, Jeff is probably one of the most, in my realm specifically, one of the people I respect most and really love what he's been doing over at Vitali. So Jeff, any other notes you want the people to know before we jump into some good convo?
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been really great getting to know Eric and getting to know the boys here. So I'm excited to jump in today and have some fun conversation around product marketing and whatever else we get into.
That's right. It could get a little weird, but we always start with one very important question, and we let Gab do the honors. So go ahead, Gab.
Thank you. Jeff, are product marketers actually marketers? Why or why not?
So you guys know, like, when someone says, like, what keeps you up at night? This question has kept me up at night for the last 3 nights, where, like, I was taking, like, melatonin. It was not even putting me to sleep, tossing and turning. And that just tells you, like, how much I've been thinking about it and, like, how close, like, this is on one way or the other. But where I shook out is, for the sake of product marketers, I think they're not marketers. I know that sounds a little crazy, but my hot take on this, though, is I believe that product marketers are the future leaders of marketing. And happy to dive more into that. But I know Eric's shocked here because Eric knows who I am, and, like, we've had a little back and forth here, but I really do believe that when you really look at the whole marketing function as a whole, product marketing definitely does some things in the marketing realm, but they're not so much, like, stuck into, like, demand gen side of things, the lead generation side of things, which is traditionally what marketing has really become. Product marketers really are spending a lot of time doing their product launch planning, positioning and messaging, the competitive intel. But also, when you really look at it, product marketing, I look at it as a hub and spoke model. They sit at the center of the broader part of the organization. And one of the spokes that they go out to is marketing. So why would product marketing go out to their own team if they are part of the marketing organization? So that's really where I've shooken out when I really thought about it. The other thing that I thought was super interesting is when you put product marketing into the marketing bucket, you're really doing a disservice by really putting it back down to what people kind of stereotype product marketing to be, which is a product launcher. And product launches, doing the whole planning, how you're going to announce this and share it and get it out into the world, is essentially a marketing aspect. That's awareness, that's visibility, that's getting prospects and people aware of what your product is going to be. And so when you really try to dial in product marketing to be marketing, you're really going back into that kind of stereotype, which I think has been a real struggle. And that's why I said it's a disservice to product marketers to be part of just marketing. But then when I said at the beginning, where my hot take is that I think they're the future leaders of product marketing, or the future leaders of marketing, is because I look at how like it's been for me as a product marketer and also working with a lot of different product marketers. And also I think it's worth, if we're going to post this recording, put a big old sticker over this is like disclaimer. This is from the POV of B2B SaaS. Marketing teams come to product marketing a lot because at the end of the day, we are the closest to the product, to the ICP, to the competitors, to the positioning and messaging. And we're really going in and influencing all the things that are going out into the marketing world, whether it's your demand gen programs, events that are being ran, SDR campaigns that they happen to be falling into marketing, all those different things product marketing is touching. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think that they're per se marketers. But I believe in the future, you'll see that product marketing will be more of that leader in the marketing organization because so many other pieces of the marketing org to follow suit of what the product marketing team can provide.
Bang. Bang. That's a double bang.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
You might not be able to catch this when we do the video recording, but I am, for the first time, absolutely blown away shocked because two reasons. One, I was like 99% sure he was coming in brand marketer, product marketer. Yes, he was gonna default to marketer. But two, I've had conversations with Jeff and I've just been very sure he was leaning in that camp. I've seen some stuff that he likes to post and tease about on LinkedIn against our profile. So for the first time on this show, I flew back in my chair, honestly shocked with that answer and pleasantly shocked, I just gotta say.
And like what I'll say too is product marketing is very different based on the individual and the organization you report into and what your product is. That's why I said the big disclaimer. This is from the POV of B2B SaaS, also not even from my POV of being a product marketer and a brand marketer. But when I look at the product marketing organization itself, yeah, I think that it needs to move away from just being seen as a general marketer, because then what ends up happening is you get what a lot of product marketers become, which is like a generalist. And they end up taking on these like marketing tasks, and it ends up like just being like a hodgepodge of things, and you don't really get to focus entirely on what you do as a marketer. But it is super interesting because, as you guys know, I have a team, Mary and Rachel. I posed this question to them yesterday because I was like, I still don't know where I'm at. And they both said too that they don't think of themselves as marketers, but when people ask them what they do, they say marketing. Because it's such an easy way to describe to people who are outside of our sphere, what do you do? So I think it's a really interesting space, but I think if you're a product marketer, you're going to do yourself more of a disservice if you think of yourself as a marketer versus something that's a greater piece of the whole that can influence a lot of different parts, including marketing, and maybe one day really reshaping like how marketing is going to be in the future.
Dude, you nailed a couple points. Like one in particular that I've experienced over the last several months is that they come to you, right? The rest of the marketing team actually is looking for you for a lot. And I've heard things like, oh, I've never been able to connect with that other side of the business before. And you've built that bridge. And I think you nailed that, man, in terms of where I hope to see it going for sure is that more leadership perspective instead of order taker role.
Yep.
I love that, man. You guys got any takes on that before I ask him a question that I've been dying to ask him for a little bit?
I just love the answer, to be honest. I'm not as shocked as you because I don't have pre data, whatever on his thought, but I just think it's well put that it's not to our advantage to put ourselves in that position because we will have less influence, we'll have less negotiation, and ultimately I feel like it's still very much a strategic role. Yes, a lot of part of it is tactical, executive, and all of that based on your environment, but just the nature of the role, it's not necessarily about labeling, but it's just about if you don't want it to become a garbage can that will just have a vague area of this is what marketing actually does to the rest of the department, it's going to be hard to push the initiative and discussion you want ultimately to have.
Yep.
I got one clarifying question here. And Jeff, like, you gave a really great disclaimer. But I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. A marketer is going to stumble on this podcast is going to hear this take and is going to be like, oh, Jeff, come on. The future of marketing, product marketers. No, they are marketers. So just a clarifying question from you as someone who's gone from an IC to a product marketing leader.
Yep.
What are the differentiating skills that you see in a product marketer that sets them away from a marketer? And more context to that is, if I'm an aspiring product marketer,
Yep.
what are the skills that I should be like double tapping into with that context in mind?
It's a really great question. And one of the things I had written down here, because I was like, as I've been tossing and turning throughout the nights, sweating about this answer, one of the things I did also come to the realization is that, yes, marketing is a department, but that's an easy way to generalize things. But really, marketing is a set of skills. And as a product marketer, I think you really want to start to gather a lot of different skill sets from a marketing lens. Research, positioning and messaging, competitive intel. Like, those are all things that marketing teams do as well. But I think to the question you asked, why the reason I have that take of like why product marketers are the future of marketing is because Eric hit on the head earlier, like reaching out to the other side of the aisle, like talking to these other teams. A lot of marketers don't have that skill set. So first and foremost, product marketers are already inherently setting themselves up to build those cross-functional relationships to be leaders beyond outside the marketing team itself. So that's point number one. I think point number two is that and we'll talk about this as we talk more about like brand marketing and things like that, but I believe that we're moving into a world where people want to be given a lot more truth than fluff and fiction, or I guess fiction, yeah. And we really want to make sure that we're getting closer to what their expectations are. And no one understands those expectations and needs better than a product marketer. And when I look at like the future of marketing and product marketers leading it, what I really see is they have the ability to understand and work with all these different departments, but also be able to understand the needs of the customers. And while they don't need to produce that work, they'll be able to really help influence and get into the right direction with your campaigns, with your strategies, and with your brand and all those different pieces and components. So yeah, that's where my head's at with it. And that's not to say if you're a product marketer out there, like you're guaranteed to be in the future having a role as being like a marketing leader. But I think that the really good product marketers out there who really go out to understand these skills, build those relationships, do all the right things to get themselves down this path, you're opening up that door for your glass ceiling to be from VP of product marketing to being CMO. And so that's really where things can get to eventually if you take the right path and take advantage of the opportunities you have in front of you.
So when you say that you're seeing PMMs being future marketing leaders, you're seeing them as CMOs, or are you seeing them with a different type of role?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the sky's the limit. Once you break through that ceiling of VP of product marketing to VP of marketing, then yeah, you can move into CMO and things like that. I think companies definitely want to get more strategic. There's a lot of competition out there. You need to really understand your customers, your buyers, your products, even your own company and your business and how it operates. And a lot of those things are really going to be your differentiators and how you really achieve success in the market. And again, I'm speaking more from a B2B SaaS lens, but yeah, I think that product marketers definitely could get to that point where they are a CMO and they're really being that chief strategist within the marketing organization and executing these things from a perspective that I think a lot of marketers that maybe come from a demand gen lens or different places might not have that same advantage. Now, it certainly depends on what your business also does. If you're focused on different types of products or areas, it might not make as much sense, but that's where my thinking has been. And of course, it's not every single CMO or VP of marketing is going to be a product marketer, but I think if you were to look at the landscape right now, the split's probably more 90-10. And I think in the next few years, we'll probably get more closer to a 70-30, 60-40 split in terms of the trajectory of who gets to those roles.
All right, you guys heard it here. We're going to be running the ship sooner than later. Jeff's put it into existence.
I have a quick question here. This has been distracting me for a few minutes. Jeff, are we wearing the same glasses?
I don't know. Are yours Garrett Light?
Okay, mine is Oliver People. Okay, maybe Oliver Peoples. Maybe they're...
It's Oliver People's son. And I just found out recently that he hates his son or something like that. So he started wearing glasses. But yes, they are. Garrett Light is Oliver People's whatever son. So that's Yes, it's easy to mix them up.
So we related by optical lenses.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
Yeah, feuding optical lenses.
It is going to see eye to eye.
Yeah, so Jeff, I'm gonna do a little story for everyone, and then I got a question I got to peel off of this. So way back when, I was lucky enough to actually interview with you for a job,
Yep.
and ended up not working out. But the thing that struck me that I've actually never had happen since that time was walking out of an interview with full closure and, more importantly, feeling like the hiring manager was looking out for my best interests. Pretty short and sweet. We had a conversation about what I wanted to do, and you felt like a lot of that was already getting handled and that it would be stunting my growth. And I've never been able to like thank you in person because I think that was a big moment for me, and obviously me being able to have a conversation with you on a pod now. So first, before I ask the question, thank you for that. It's been really cool. But my question is, how do you lead that way? How do you recruit that way? And what secret sauce can we maybe pass on to some of our viewers that helps them, one, have interviews like that? But if they're obviously in a role like yourself, how can you tip them to make sure that they're doing that same type of service that I felt walking out of that interview?
Yeah, it's tough to prescribe. I think a lot of it really has to do with the person. And a little bit of background on myself is I started my job career in community management. So I really started working closely with a lot of different types of people I've never met before. And really, my job was to show them respect and make sure that they felt heard and make sure they felt appreciated, because it was my job to make sure they wanted to come back. And so, really early in my career, I really built an understanding for developing empathy, but also building relationships and just flat out treating people the way I'd want to be treated. And look, I'm in a role now where I'm a director, but I was once in a day in a role where I was looking for new jobs and would apply for things and thought it went great, and then crickets, and I'm just like emailing the recruiter. I'm like, hey, like, I get it. Like, I understand. Like, I didn't get the job, but do you give me any feedback? Anything I could fix? I don't get it. Like, I keep going out here and not getting any like jobs, and like, being a young person back then, not knowing truly how competitive the environment was, and to me, it just felt really debilitating. It was like, man, like, I'm really trying to break through. I'm doing all the right things. Why isn't it working? And so, when I got the opportunity to start to really manage and hire, I felt it was a personal responsibility for a couple things. One, I didn't want to waste people's time. Like, I don't want to bring people in that are not going to be the right fit. So I really try to avoid like those endless lists of just talking to everybody and just drowning out. I spend a lot of time looking into who I'm going to bring in and make sure it's actually worth the conversation. So first and foremost, like, you got to spend the time on it. If you're just being willy-nilly about it, like, it's just not going to work out. Like, you're going to be feeling like you're wasting your time. You're going to be, not enjoying the conversation. I want to go into an interview optimistic that the person I'm going to be talking to could be the right fit, and also that I could learn from and see what they can do. The other part, that you talked about is you have to have mutual respect for the person you're interviewing. I'm bringing in somebody that is going to be taking on responsibility, and at the same time, I'm taking on responsibility. As crazy as it sounds, as a hiring manager, I'm now responsible for someone's livelihood. Like, I am putting them in a position to be successful. I'm putting them in a position for their living and how they're going to grow and develop into their next stage of their career. And what you really want to make sure when you're doing that is you're taking that personal responsibility to not hire somebody and put them in a position where you're pushing them back. I've been in that situation before, and it's not a good feeling. And so when you and I talked, Eric, especially for product marketing, because it's a very unique role, the first thing I really like to first understand is A, how do you see product marketing? And B, what do you want to do in product marketing? Because, depending on those answers, the organization might be able to provide that fit or not. I mean, tell you, for instance, like, I work at Vitally as a PMM, and I do, I think, a good job at what I do here, but I have a friend who's a PMM at TikTok, and I could not do her job. She doesn't do anything close to what I do as a PMM at Vitally. It's nothing close to what is related. It goes back to our question earlier, are product marketers marketers? She's not like a marketer in that sense. It's like very different. So, yeah, it's really important to just really understand who you're talking to and understand what they want. And when you and I talked, Eric, honestly, I saw a lot of myself. I saw somebody who was really ambitious, somebody who was super creative, somebody who wanted to build. And not that I wasn't looking for that in a product marketer, because obviously you want those characteristics, but I could tell that you really wanted ownership over something that personally I wasn't going to be giving up ownership on at that stage in my career. And that was not going to do you any service. You're going to sit back there saying, I want to do these things that Jeff is working on, things like websites and things like that. And I was just like, that's just not going to happen today. And so it wasn't fair to you to just jump into it. And I think that's really important to note for anybody else out here. I'm talking about from the hiring perspective, but if you're looking for a job, and I know it's a tough market out there, so it's easier said than done, but if you're looking for a job, don't just jump into something that's the right, if it's not the right fit. I can't tell you how many times in my past I have gone into a job interview, I've moved on to the next stage, and I've reached out to the recruiter and said, I'm no longer interested. Because I knew from those conversations it wasn't going to be the right fit for me. And why would I do that to myself or the company I'm talking to? And so it's just as important as someone who's hiring as one who's looking for a job to make sure that you are doing things that are the right fit for you, because ultimately that's where you want to spend your next 1, 2, 5 years, and you want to make sure you're getting the most out of it. So it's really important to think about from both sides of the coin. And so really encourage when you're doing that, be empathetic for yourself and the job you're looking at, and be thinking about all those different angles.
Jeff, one clarifying question is that when you said putting more time in, what does that exactly mean? Because for individuals who are in the job seeking process, there you might have heard chatter where it's I've gone through 8 rounds, or I'm being asked to do this 3 hour case interview. So like what when you say more time, I'm curious to hear more what that means.
Yeah, sorry. So when I say more time, I'm talking about from the hiring manager perspective, not from the person applying for the job. As a job applicant, it's tough, man. There's so many variables, and I can tell you as someone who is a hiring manager, there's things that slip through the cracks. There's things that you miss. Like, you're not perfect. I'm a human too. And as someone who's looking out there to look for a job, there's only so much what you can do. What I can tell you, and I've talked to other product marketers about this, is when you are applying for a job for a product marketer, yes, you need to know all the things that you can do and that you've done, but what's your personal story? We've talked about it a few times here today, but every product marketer, every product marketing organization, and every business and how they handle product marketing is different. And not every, but you know what I mean. But nonetheless, you need to have your story really honed in on who are you, the product marketer. All three of you here, if you came into an interview and all told me the same story, I would be disappointed. I'd be like, these are all the same people. I want product marketers who are going to come in and have a really unique story. They tell who they are. They can tell, that background into who they've came from, what they're interested in accomplishing, what type of impact they've made. And that is really where you're going to stand out, because everyone's doing the project, everyone's answering the questions, but how are you going to tell them that you're different? And if you can make that stick in people's minds as you move through these rounds, they're going to remember, oh man, I really love that story that Eric told me about how he got into this creative challenge and it really brought his personality out. Things like that are going to really help you stick out during these interview processes. And the last thing I'll say on that note too is I just told you guys, think about your narrative. Tell that story. Say it out loud. Say it to somebody you know if you're looking for a job. And if you don't like that story, get back into work and change the story. Build what you want to be and become the product marketer you want to be, and tell that story when you have the opportunity to do so. So you're in full control.
I love this. It's not just about positioning yourself strategically, right? It's also about making sure you make good use of that storytelling muscle
Yep.
to really explain it. But as you said, like it's all about the story to how you sell yourself and how it sounds more like a natural flow than like I've been guilty on being on interviews and it's like, I can do this, I can do that. Like you're not an all-in-one tool, you're a PMM.
Yep.
Yes, you can do multiple things, but why should we choose you for that specific fit?
Yep.
On last season, and he introduced us to the topic of the brand man.
Oh yeah.
And we loved it, right? Like the whole conversation of back in early 1900s, the product marketer was called the brand man, right? And now we've of course diluted it all and everything. But with you have a very unique role, and I think we can literally call you the brand man.
Yeah.
What's it like having that oversight of both departments and being able to obviously make decisions, but being responsible for both of those very critical departments.
Yeah, yeah, it's super interesting. And I re-listened to Harvey's podcast with you guys before this because I was just interested to hear again what he had to say, and then it had me once again rethinking my position at product marketers. But I stuck to my guns. But yeah, it's super interesting. When I came into Vitally, I was the 15th employee and like the third marketing hire. And so in my past, I've obviously done product marketing. We talked about a little bit of the community management stuff, but I also dabbled a little bit in like design. So at one point, I was doing a little UX design, and then I was starting to do some like marketing design. My mom, shout out to my mom, she's an interior designer, so I've always been a little, more into the way things look and bring it all together. And as I also told the guys here earlier, at one point in my career, I was working for the World Arm Wrestling League, doing all their marketing assets and designing all their social assets and really building up their brand. And so branding is something that's always been super interesting to me. And one of the big struggles I've had throughout my career, especially as a product marketer, is that product marketing and brand marketing can sometimes get a bit disconnected. Product marketing really understands what as we spoke about earlier, the ICP, what your competitors are doing, what your product does, how are your buyers experiencing the product and like seeing the benefits post purchase, and bringing it all into a POV. And so a lot of times what you end up having is like all this positioning and messaging, and then you go to the brand team, you're like, here's the positioning and messaging, can you create a brand around it? And then it's, oh, that doesn't really connect well to what we're saying, or they just go ahead and build something out that visually doesn't identify with like what it is. It also, they don't always understand exactly all those different things we just talked about. And so when I came into Vitally, I had a really unique opportunity, which was I could say, hey, I would like to establish myself as owning both product marketing and brand marketing. And so when I came in, like I was putting together everything for feature launches, positioning and messaging, competitive intel, but I also took over the website and started really owning that piece of it and starting to think about how do we visually tell the story about what Vitally is. And as I also talked about a little bit earlier, I believe that really great marketing tells the story of your product. It really tells the story of who your buyer is. And I wanted the brand to tell that. And I think when you go to a lot of B2B SaaS sites, what I get frustrated with is they don't show the product. It's all like very floof. They have a lot of imagery that's maybe it's like weird shapes or it's like half weird versions of their product, which we do a little bit, but we mix it in. But because you got to do in some places, but they're basically hiding their product. And the only way you're going to get to their product is by booking a demo. And that's or signing up for a free trial. You still got to go this extra step to actually understand what the product is. And so when I was building out my department, what I really wanted to do is I wanted a brand that told the story of our product because I feel like our product is our best asset. And so putting that at the forefront, the only way you can really successfully do that is if product marketing is shaping that story. And so on my team, I have two product marketers. One of them is focused on pre-sales, pre-purchasing customers, and then the other one's focused on post for driving adoption. But then I also have two visual designers, and they are phenomenal. They are best in class. And by having them within my team, they also understand our product, they understand our buyers. We're not just going to them saying, hey, we want this and this is what you should do. We're talking about what's going on, and they actually come to the table understanding our product, understanding who we're selling to, and able to really create the branding around it. And so I think that's been a really big differentiator for us. And so when we look at things from a competitive lens, people are coming to our site and they're instantly seeing what we offer. They're understanding the product that we have, and they're seeing it through the brand story versus seeing a brand story and then going up beyond that and then having to find out what the product actually is. Now, again, disclaimer, B2B SaaS. If you are a brand manager at Nike, probably not the same strategy here. That's not your goal. Like, your goal is to build an entire culture and brand and all that stuff around what Nike is. I'm talking from a POV of a B2B Series B SaaS product. But I still think it's a really important story and thing for people to think about, because even at that level of Nike, they really get to the ethos of who their buyer is and what types of things like personify with them, but they don't always tell the same product story, or they don't always tell the same ideas and pain points that the customers actually experience and why they choose one brand or the other. So it's a really unique perspective, and I think that's really allowed us to have what I would consider a competitive edge in our space.
I gotta say, you called it out earlier. There's almost a natural disconnect between those two departments. And I think you being able to take ownership of that at Vitali has definitely shined. And I would advise anyone who's listening in to not only build that relationship with your brand team, even if you're not going to be under the same departmental rule, build that relationship and check out Vitali's stuff because, again, they're not our ICP necessarily, right? Customer success platform. But what you guys are putting out, how you do it, there's so much that product marketers can learn from, and particularly then how to go back and build that bridge with brand and give some examples on how to have that strong relationship. So, shout out again, man. I've actually, your last 2 years of your like state of reports,
Yeah,
brand team outdid themselves this year. I guess just want to say.
they're phenomenal. They're really top of class.
Remember, last year was like a
Uh,
cream, like a creamy feel. And this year you went that dark vibe. I was like, oh, that hit so hard. So yeah, let them know. I was vibing.
Jeff, 2 quick questions for you.
Yep.
First one is if if product marketing is our job is to tell what the product does so it makes that buying decision easier. Curious, like how do we define brand marketing? What, like for someone who says, oh, brand marketing is people who markets a brand, like how would you define knowing like both sides of the house? That's my first question.
Yeah, I think when I look at brand marketing versus product marketing, it tends to be more of like the general storytelling. You can almost say it's like the written storytelling. Like we're putting together positioning and messaging documents, some other documentation around that, writing out headlines sometimes. It really varies again on what you're doing as a product marketer. The brand marketing is really the visual storytelling of a brand. And yes, sometimes brand marketing can include like scripts and like other written content and headlines sometimes too. But where I really draw the line is, product marketing is really telling that story of what the product is and does. And then brand marketing is visually bringing that story to life. Because let's face it, we are in a world where reality is like people don't read. You want them to read, but in order to get somebody to read, you need to first draw their eyeballs in with something else. Otherwise, they're going to skip. One of the things that I love to tell my team, because we also help with a lot of social posts, because like product marketing really understands our product and our ICP, but also the brand marketing he's building it. My rule is if you ever come across a social post that stops you, screenshot it and share it. Because it stopped you for a reason, and we want to observe it. Did it stop you because the headline was catchy? Did it stop you because the visuals were catchy? And 90% of the time, it's the visuals. And what really can help is if those visuals complement the story really well. And so I think that's really where you draw that line, is like brand marketing is really going to tell like that visual identity and set that mark for your business, where product marketing is going to tell that story that complements it. But when those two are like merged and put together, it really has a whole nother like level of marketing in itself in those two.
For those, oh no, you guys are good. I'm like, because everything y'all been saying to this point is building up to this for this one. For those product marketers who feel disconnected to their brand marketing teams, like what are things that a product marketer can do to build that better rapport and relationship with brand?
So this goes back to hopefully what is the first skill you have in your product marketing tool belt, which is relationship building. If you want to be a really great product marketer, you need to know how to build relationships. If you cannot build those relationships with other people in terms of A, being respectful, B, showing that you have value, and C, being someone that's easy to work with, it's going to be really hard for you to build relationships with anybody, let alone a brand team. But brand people, like, I think what's really important to know is, like, one, they don't want to be told, like, what to do. They want to be informed on how they should do it. They want to be the brand and creative people that they are. So you need to give them that freedom to really think about things. And so if you come in saying, hey, I'm the product marketer, here's the story I'm telling, here's how it needs to look, that's not going to fly. Like, it's not going to work well. If you come in saying, hey, here's what I'm trying to say, how can I visually tell that story and give them that power to be the brand person they are, they can then really go from there, and then they want to hopefully continue to work with you. And then at that point, you start to build another relationship where then you can collaborate and say, hey, I have an idea, here's a concept, here's some feedback, and eventually you get to that place. But if you come in right away being a bull and I think the shop,
China.
and like you just start like rampaging around and like just causing a ruckus, you're never going to build those relationships. And trust me, I've been there. I've learned from these. I'm not just saying this because I'm perfect. I've done it. And I have definitely ruffled feathers in the past, and I've learned from those situations. And it takes a little bit of learning, but eventually you get there, and you just have to really understand people and how to operate with them and collaborate with others, just like you do, hopefully, with a product team, with an engineering team, with an executive team. And eventually you can really get there where it can be a really mutual, beneficial relationship that can really produce beautiful things.
Dude, could not have said that better myself. And recently, having an actual brand team to work with, I see their emotions light up when I say, I trust you, I believe in you, and give them very little guidance in terms of like tactical direction, just like conceptual, here's what I'm thinking, and then really give them the keys. I've seen just a tremendous growth from day one to day whatever each time that I do that. So it's exactly like what you said. Don't restrict that from them and their greatness. Let them work their magic, because that's what they're hired for.
Like they even spotlighted on you, Eric, really quick. You remember the Gab, and I think Jeff, you heard this story too. Back in the day, when you proposed the branding for We're Not Marketers, we were like, oh hell no, we can't use skeletons like on LinkedIn.
Yeah, Gab was like, Gab was almost like a hard no. Gab was like, well, no, sir.
Come on. I was not a hard no. I was just like, I'm going to take the
Play the
majority.
tapes. Play the tapes.
Going back to our WhatsApp chat history.
You guys are making me look bad. A hard no.
Sometimes it's just gotta go. And look, it paid off.
It did. Exactly. Let them cook.
Yeah.
Should have kept my mouth shut.
Jeff, from a personal perspective, I've wanted to also ask you this because I've seen a few times on your LinkedIn, you've had the pleasure of competitors coming on in and undercutting and taking some of your hard-earned messaging, right? And so I want to just ask you, how does that feel when that happens to you?
Yeah, it's actually, first and foremost, I just want to make it clear this is like a team effort. Like, it's not just my messaging. Like, a lot of people go into it, so I don't want to just seem like they're stealing my creative genius. A lot of people I work with really help us hone in our message and stuff. And I think the first part of it is just because of that, it's like disappointment, like frustration. It's like, man, like we really spent a lot of time working together, hammering through a ton of different things, testing a lot of things, and then for someone else, which typically is a bigger competitor, just ripping it off. And so the first kind of feeling is like disappointment. But then the second feeling is like excitement. Ooh, back to the drawing board. Like, they took what we did, let's reinvent the wheel once again. And I think to us, in my career, I've generally have worked in startups. Obviously, I've been through a couple like acquisitions, was at Amazon for a short minute. But as a startup, your goal is to be a disruptor. And if your competitors are stealing your messaging or like literally copying and pasting your messaging, that's a compliment to you. They're saying, we're paying attention to the disruptor and we need to copy what they're doing. And that means we were already a step ahead, so it's time to get another step ahead. And so to me, as a startup person, where I'm like, I love the challenge and the grind of a startup, like, it means we didn't do enough. Let's keep going. They can't keep changing things. And so I think one of the things that have been really exciting for me recently that we've been doing a lot more of, that we have the capacity to do, is a lot of A/B testing. Like, let's test everything that we're thinking. Like, let's try different messaging out there and see like how well it resonates, how far can we go to differentiate ourselves where it actually continues to have a positive impact and just continuously stay ahead of the competition. And yeah, I guess what I like to say is thank you to my competition. You guys inspire me and my team to just keep working harder and harder because we want to continue to lead by example, and it's a great thing.
It's also the fact that I think the market is not necessarily dumb. Like, up to a point, they know that even if you have the same messaging, the same copy,
Yep.
there's definitely one of them that will have the research and the data to back it up.
Yeah.
So that way it's just like a clear decision in front of them. But follow-up question regarding that, you said about being disruptor, being differentiated. Do you think that if I'm PMM, I work on messaging, I put out something out there, I ship it, the competitor copy it, does that mean that I was not disruptive enough or that my POV was not contrarian enough?
Not necessarily, because if they're copying you, that doesn't mean you weren't being disruptive enough. Because it'd be more if you did copy and then someone that you were speaking to, and let's just say a buying cycle, they're like, I'm looking at you and company B, and I think you guys are saying the same thing about your product. Then it would be, I was not being disruptive enough. But if your new copy is very different, and for a short, let's make it clear, you're not going to write copy and then the next day your competitor's going to have it. So it's not like they're going to like copy you overnight or get close to what you're doing overnight. So you need to have like that. This is where it gets really interesting of like where I get like with qualitative and quantitative, but this is where your qualitative sense as a product marketer really has to come in. And you just have to really understand what's the voice of the customer saying, what are they bringing back to you in the market. But I don't think that means you're not being disruptive. Now, obviously, in some instances, you're, as a product marketer, you're limited by your product. I'm not here saying, hey, PMMs, go out there and be like bullshitting. Like, I am the most anti-vaporware person in the world. Like, if your product market, if you're trying to be disruptive by promoting vaporware, you're only setting yourself up and your company to fail. So don't go doing that. But if you can be really bold in what you're saying about something that is true, that's really helpful. And like when I talk about this like disruptive copy, it's just more being original. I think a lot of times, you especially become a disruptor in a space. I mean, I'll just take CRMs for example. You got a lot of Salesforce and HubSpot probably saying a lot of the same things. I don't spend a ton of time looking at their websites, but I guarantee they're saying a lot of the same things. And then you got someone like I believe it's Also coming in, and they have a completely different message. And that is where you got to be really disruptive. And so what gets frustrating is when the other competitors in the space or those legacy players try to imitate the disruptor to jump onto that train. And what they actually end up with is like not being able to follow up with what they're putting out there. It's like when you get like, you go to Foot Locker and they got like this new Nikes and you're like, oh, those are sweet. And then you go into the Marshalls next door and they got a shoe that looks similar but doesn't have the Nike logo on it. Like, that's what I'm talking about, where it's like, it's just not the same. And it's really on your follow through and what the actual full product and experience is.
And the ones in Marshalls are called Mikeys.
Mikey.
I like
That's awesome, because earlier, if you heard, Jeff was like, yeah, I saw a lot of Eric in me. And if competitor took my messaging like that, I just call them lazy bums. But he took the high road and said, thank you for pushing me to be better. So there you go. Contrast between Jeff and I. But
they know though. Maybe they know. I don't know. The other thing I will also mention is just like an asterisk to this whole thing is like subliminal thought is like a very real thing. As PMMs, we spend a lot of time looking at our competitors and we just like stalk them. Maybe you guys aren't stalking me, but I'm stalking all you. But we're stalking our competitors, seeing what they're doing, trying to stay a step ahead. And sometimes it just creeps through. You're like, dang, that sounded real good. And you're like, let's push it. And then you forget to check. But me, like I'll say, as I mentioned earlier, like I am a startup guy, but I did have 6 months at Amazon after Eero was acquired. And one of the first things that I learned real quick was that you can't just publish and say whatever you want. I had to start working with lawyers, and I was in the midst of a product launch that was supposed to be, I was finalizing packaging because this one I worked in hardware, and I had to do like a box that had like print on it, and like we had a claim on there. And like, we actually need to go through legal and all this, and it's going to take 6 months. What are you talking about 6 months? I got 30 days till this is supposed to be like finished and proofed. And so that was a hard lesson in life where it's like, hopefully I'm never in that situation again where I got tons of red tape to go through, but make sure you're checking everything twice before you hit go.
the days of having to work with the label guy or gal. Jeff, this was dope. It was cool getting to know you a little bit more outside of what we've been able to just DM on the side. So thank you for joining us.
Yes.
I know you said earlier there's not a lot of promo you want to do. So then, other than finding you on LinkedIn, you can find Jeff on this episode and nowhere else. So check him out on LinkedIn. More importantly, check out what his team's been doing over at Vitali. It's really cool stuff. And yeah, guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of We're Not Marketers. Later.
Thanks again, Jeff. See you guys, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
guys.
you.
It was a blast.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMMs. Thanks again, and see you soon.